It is past midnight on the Empire's northern frontier. Rain hammers the leather of a war tent. Inside, by a single lamp, the most powerful man alive is awake, and he is not planning a battle. He is writing to himself. Not orders for his legions, orders for his own heart. Be humble, be patient, remember that you will die. He commands a world that runs from Britain to Syria, yet the only ground he is fighting for tonight is the territory behind his own eyes. He calls it a citadel, a fortress no army can storm, if only he can learn to hold it. He never meant for you to read a word of this, and that is exactly why, 18 centuries later, it may be the most honest book ever written. His name is Marcus Aurelius. Rome, the 2nd century. He is emperor, the last of the 5 men history would call the good ones, and his reign reads like a stress test for the human soul. A plague marches home with his armies and empties whole cities. The frontier wars never end. A trusted general declares himself emperor and revolts. His wife dies. His co-ruler dies. Of the many children he fathers, most are buried young. And the son he will leave the throne to, Commodus, grows into a tyrant. This is the life behind the journal. He didn't even give it a title. The Greek manuscripts simply call it To Himself. We call it Meditations, but that name is almost a lie. It isn't a lecture to the world. It's a man arguing with himself in the dark. And here is the first strange thing. A private notebook could begin anywhere, with a fear, a complaint, a plan. Marcus begins his by saying thank you. The entire first chapter is a list of debts. From his grandfather, he writes, he learned character and self-control. From his mother, generosity, and how to live simply, not in the least like the rich. From his teacher Rusticus, the gift that changed everything. A battered copy of the philosopher Epictetus, loaned straight off his own shelf. Page after page, the ruler of the world names the people who made him, and exactly what each one taught him. Before he says a single word about how to live, he accounts for everyone he owes. It is the humblest opening imaginable, and it sets the tone for all that follows. But gratitude is easy on a calm day. What about the days that aren't? Marcus's answer starts with a brutal inventory of what he actually owns. Look closely, he tells himself, and almost none of your life is yours. Your reputation? It lives in other people's mouths. Your body? On loan and failing. Your comfort, your plans, tomorrow itself. All of it can be taken from you in an afternoon. Nothing is truly under your control, he writes, except one thing, your own judgment. What happens to you is not up to you. What you make of it is. This is the hinge the entire book turns on. The emperor who could order any man killed is telling himself that his real power is almost embarrassingly small, a single room, the size of his own mind. But that room, he insists, is enough. Everything else in these pages is an attempt to prove it. So he does the thing most of us spend our whole lives avoiding. He stares straight at death. You could leave life right now, he writes. So let that determine what you do and say and think, not as a threat, as a lens. He reminds himself that yesterday he was a little seed, and tomorrow he will be ash and a name, and soon not even the name. Alexander the Great and his mule driver, he notes, both died, and the same thing happened to both. To another man, this would be despair. To Marcus, it is the opposite. It is fuel. If time is this short, then no insult is worth an hour of anger, no grudge worth a day. Death doesn't drain life of meaning. It hands this afternoon its urgency. The clock he keeps hearing is not a countdown to dread. It is a bell telling him to begin. Then comes the most famous entry of all, and it is about the thing that ruins ordinary days, other people. When you wake in the morning, Marcus tells himself, say this first. The people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. Not the world's most inspiring alarm clock. But watch where he takes it. They are like this, he writes. Because they can't tell good from evil, they simply don't know any better. So I can no more be angry at them than at my own hand. Because we were made to work together, he says, like the two rows of teeth, upper and lower. He isn't excusing them. He is disarming himself. He decides how the whole day will feel before it has even started, and he refuses to hand that decision to a stranger's bad mood. That image, the 2 rows of teeth, is not a throwaway line. It is a whole worldview. Marcus keeps returning to it. "I am one limb of a single living body," he writes. Cut yourself off from another person, and you tear yourself away from the whole of nature. He pictures a hand severed from its arm, a branch cut from its tree, still hand-shaped, still branch-shaped, but dead because it left the thing that fed it. To hate other people, in his eyes, isn't merely wrong. It is a slow kind of suicide. What injures the hive, he says, injures the bee, and here is the mercy hidden in it. Unlike a real severed hand, he writes, a human being can always reattach himself. You are never more than one choice away from rejoining the body you belong to. The door back is never locked. But how do you actually stop a small thing from ruining you? Marcus has a technique, cold, almost surgical. When something rattles you, he says, strip it down, trace its outline, call it by its plain name. He does it to the finest things first, so it can't feel like an excuse. Roasted meat is a dead animal. Vintage wine is old grape juice. The purple robe of the emperor, his own robe, is sheep's wool dipped in shellfish blood. He isn't being bleak for sport. He is peeling the story off the object. Most of what tortures us, he realizes, isn't the event itself. It is the terrifying label we glue on top of it. External things are not the problem, he writes. It is your assessment of them, which you can erase right now. See a thing as it truly is, and half its power over you is simply gone. When stripping a thing down isn't enough, Marcus does the opposite. He pulls the camera back, way back. He imagines rising above the earth and looking down. Whole armies like columns of ants, weddings and funerals, and markets all churning at once. Empires that felt eternal shrinking to a stain on a map. Asia and Europe, he writes, are distant corners of the universe. The whole ocean is a drop. This present moment, a split second in all of eternity. From up there, the promotion he wanted, the enemy he feared, the reputation he was guarding, they don't vanish exactly. They simply find their true size. It is the ancient version of seeing a photograph of Earth from space and feeling your problems quietly rearrange themselves. Zoom in to see a thing clearly. Zoom out to see it truly. Between those two moves, Marcus finds room to breathe. Which brings us to the line that made him famous all over again 2,000 years later. Marcus is thinking about fire. A big enough flame, he notices, isn't smothered by what you throw on it. It takes the wood, the trash, whatever you feed it, and turns all of it into more fire and light. A mind, he decides, can work the same way. And then he writes the sentence, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Read that twice. The obstacle is not blocking the path. On the days you get this right, the obstacle is the path. The rude client, the ruined plan, the illness, the delay. Each one is raw material, and a rational being, he says, can turn any setback into fuel. He is not promising the fire won't come. He is deciding in advance what he will do with the heat. And now we reach the center of everything, the place the whole book has been climbing toward. After all the stripping down and the zooming out, Marcus finally names the thing he has really been describing. The mind without passions, he writes, is a fortress. No place is more secure. Once we take refuge there, we are safe forever. This is the citadel. Not a palace, not an army, but a small, quiet room inside you that no plague can enter, no emperor can seize, no betrayal can burn down. Nowhere you can retreat to, he says, is more peaceful than your own soul. Dig deep enough into yourself, and the water, goodness, is always down there, waiting to bubble back up. The most powerful man in the world spent his nights defending a border no map could show. He believed it was the only border that finally mattered, and he believed anyone could hold it. There is only one place that citadel can be entered from, and it is not the past or the future. It is now. Marcus catches himself, again and again, bleeding his peace away into things that don't exist yet. Remember, he writes, You cannot lose any life other than the one you are living now. And you cannot live any life other than the one you are losing. You can't lose the past. It is already gone. You can't lose the future. You don't have it yet. All any of us ever really holds is this narrow, flickering present. So he gives himself a strange gift and notes it down in his own hand, like a reminder. Give yourself a present, the present moment. Everything you are anxious about is either behind you or has not arrived. Step out of the two haunted houses of yesterday and tomorrow, and there is almost always, right here, enough. But the present keeps handing him things he never ordered. Plague, war, the revolt. So Marcus takes his boldest step of all. He decides not just to endure what happens, but to love it. It is not enough to accept your fate, he writes. You have to welcome it. To love only what happens, what was destined. No greater harmony than that. He pictures the universe as a vast loom, and himself as a single thread woven into a pattern he cannot see. Instead of fighting the weave, he tells it, I share your longing. Later writers would name this idea amor fati, love of your fate. Marcus never used the phrase. He just lived it. It is the difference between a man dragged through his life and a man walking through it. The same road, the same weather, but one of them has stopped fighting the rain and found he was free. Underneath all of this sits Marcus's deepest belief, the reason any of it holds together. The universe, he is convinced, is not a chaos. It is a single living system, bound by one rational order the Stoics called the logos. Everything is interwoven, he writes, and the web is holy. Nothing is truly unconnected to anything else. To the world, he says, simply, your harmony is mine. All things are born from you, exist in you, and return to you. So when something painful happens, Marcus refuses to call it a mistake. I am a part of a whole governed by nature, he reasons. So what right does the part have to complain about what the whole assigns it? You may or may not share his faith in a rational cosmos, but notice what it buys him. A way to meet catastrophe without the exhausting conviction that the universe is out to get him personally. So if almost nothing is in your control and the universe runs on its own vast plan, what is actually left for a person to do? Marcus's answer is bracingly simple. Be good. Not successful. Not admired. Good. He keeps a short list he returns to like a compass. Justice, honesty, self-control, courage. If you can find anything better than those, he writes, turn to it with your whole soul, but you won't. Nothing is truly good, he insists, except what makes you fairer, kinder, braver, more free. Wealth and status and applause aren't evil. They are just beside the point. They can't make a bad man's life go well. And of all the virtues, he crowns one as the root of the rest, justice. In a world where he could seize anything he wanted, the emperor decided the only prize worth chasing was his own character. Good fortune, he writes, is the good you build yourself. Living that out, day after day, mostly comes down to one exhausting thing: staying decent with people who aren't. Marcus knows this is where philosophy either works or turns out to be only words. So he coaches himself plainly, like a man talking himself down off a ledge. Don't be disgusted by another person's bad breath or bad temper, he writes. You both have your flaws, so get on with it. When someone wrongs you, ask what idea of good and evil led them there, and you will find yourself pitying them instead of raging. And when you do a good turn and get nothing back, stop waiting for the receipt. Do the good thing, he says, then move on to the next, the way a healthy plant bears its fruit and asks no thanks. Kindness, he decides, is invincible as long as it is sincere, not a doormat, a fortress that happens to be gentle. There is one hunger Marcus attacks harder than any other, because he, of all people, is most exposed to it, the craving to be remembered. He has statues, coins stamped with his face, an empire that could carve his name into stone forever. And he spends page after page talking himself out of caring. The people who will remember you, he writes, will soon die too, and their replacements after them, until the memory gutters out like a flame passed hand to hand. You are chasing applause from an audience that does not exist yet and won't last when it does. Longing to be famous forever, he notes, is longing to be discussed by strangers who will be dust. It is a startling thing for an emperor to write, and it is freeing. If posterity is only smoke, you are finally allowed to stop performing and simply do the work in front of you. Which raises the least glamorous problem in the whole book, and maybe the most human. Some mornings, Marcus just does not want to get up. He writes it down, almost sheepishly. At dawn, when you can't drag yourself from the bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work as a human being. Were you really made for this? He asks, to lie warm under the blankets. Look at the plants, the birds, the ants, the spiders, every one of them up and doing its part, holding the world together. And you are unwilling to do yours? Here is the ruler of Rome, needing to argue himself out of hitting the snooze button. It is oddly comforting. His towering philosophy comes down, in the end, to the same small hinge our days do. Will you get up and do the next right thing, or won't you? Meaning isn't declared. It is assembled, one ordinary morning at a time. And some mornings, it is worse than reluctance. Marcus is often in pain, a sick body, sleepless nights, an old man's failing frame carried through a young man's war. So he writes to steady himself against it. If the pain is truly unbearable, he reasons, then it carries us off quickly. And if it lasts, then it can be borne. Because the mind can keep its own calm if it just refuses to make the body's alarm its own. Choose not to be harmed, he tells himself, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been. That sounds almost impossible, and Marcus half knows it. This is a man coaching himself, not a man who has already won. But that is the whole point. He isn't pretending to be untouchable. He is practicing in ink the daily work of not letting a hurting body drag down a free mind. There is one force Marcus can never argue with, only befriend, change. Nothing holds still. Time, he writes, is a river, a violent current of events. A thing appears, is swept past, and already another is rushing by that will be gone in its turn. Everything you see is dissolving into what comes next. The world is nothing but change, and our life is only perception. Your body, this very year, the empire itself, all of it is a wave that has already begun to fall. Most of us hear that and grip harder, terrified of losing what we love. Marcus hears it and loosens his hold. If everything is on its way to becoming something else, then clinging is the one guaranteed way to suffer. Loss is not the exception in a life, he realizes. Loss is the tide the whole thing floats on, and you can drown fighting it, or you can learn to swim. So who or what is running this endless river? Here, Marcus is honest in a way that feels startlingly modern. He is not always sure. He keeps returning to a stark either-or. Either the universe is a purposeful order watched over by gods, or it is a meaningless swirl of atoms, providence, or blind chance. And his remarkable move is that his advice barely changes either way. If the gods exist, he reasons, they are good, so trust them. If they don't, and it is all just atoms, then you are the only source of order there is, so be that order. Don't waste breath begging heaven to hand you things. Ask instead, he says, to be freed from the fear of losing them. He even thanks the gods for help he felt he was given, remedies that came in dreams when he was coughing blood. He never resolves the mystery. He just refuses to let it paralyze him. And then, inevitably, the river carries Marcus toward the one change he has been rehearsing for all along, his own death. But by now, he has disarmed it. Don't look down on death, he writes. Welcome it. It is just one more of the things nature wants. Being born was a change. Dying is the same kind of change, running the other way. He reminds himself that the same nature that gave him his life is now, gently, asking for it back, the way a ripe olive falls, praising the tree that grew it and thanking the season that let it drop. There is no horror in these lines, and no bravado either. Just a man who has spent a lifetime practicing, quietly getting himself ready. The fear of death, he decided long ago, is really only one more label the mind glues onto a thing. And labels, he knows by now, can be peeled off. It would be easy, right here, to turn Marcus into a saint. We shouldn't. He was a Roman emperor, and a man of a brutal age. He owned slaves and never once questioned that he should. He watched men die in the arena and found it mostly tedious. His world's deepest cruelties he simply never saw. That is the honest frame these pages need. This is not a flawless sage handing down perfect wisdom. It is a limited man inside a savage system, straining toward decency a little further than his time asked of him, and knowing that he keeps falling short. He never claimed to have arrived. He thought of himself, at best, as a poor and unfinished student. And maybe that is exactly what keeps the book alive. He is not preaching down from a mountain. He is a fellow struggler, taking notes in the dark, trying to be a little better tomorrow than he was today. And then, on the very last page, Marcus writes the entry that closes the whole book, and he does it, fittingly, with a picture of an ending. Think of your life, he says, as a play. You were given a number of acts by the same power that cast you in the role, and that same power now signals for the curtain. Perhaps you got through only 3 and wanted 5, but a play can be complete in 3. So when the director calls you off, don't storm off bitter. He lays down the last words like a man setting down his pen for good. Make your exit with grace, the same grace that was shown to you. No triumph, no final lesson underlined, just a tired, decent man at his desk, deciding that when his time came, he would meet it as he had tried to meet everything else, without fear, without drama, on his own terms. Here is the twist Marcus could never have known. The private notebook he never meant for a single other eye is the only reason we remember him at all, not as a name in a list of emperors, but as a voice. For 1,000 years, it nearly vanished, surviving in one fragile copy in the Greek East, rescued around the year 900 by a churchman who found the manuscript so old it was falling apart and had it copied by hand. It was not printed until the 1500s, and from that one thin thread hangs everything. The book that kings kept by their beds, that soldiers carried into war, that a modern president rereads every few years. The most powerful man of his age is remembered, in the end, not for anything he conquered, but for the honest words he wrote to himself when he was sure no one was watching. So what does a Roman emperor, alone in a war tent, have to hand you across 1,800 years? Just this. Almost nothing that happens to you is in your control, but the one thing that turns out to be the only thing that ever mattered. Not your reputation, not your comfort, not the number of your years, your judgment, the way you choose to meet whatever comes. That is the citadel within, and it is yours if you will spend a life learning to hold it. When all else is stripped away, one reader wrote, "There is left to each of us an unassailable wintry kingdom, and it stands fast." Marcus never dreamed you would hear these words. He was only trying to get through tomorrow. If this moved something in you, stay with us. Next time, the teacher who shaped him, Epictetus. Until then, guard the citadel. It is the only ground you will ever truly own.